Hey folks, welcome to the Dennis Miller Show. I am the aforementioned Mr. Miller. In our next segment, Media Research Center President Brent Bozell will react to the loss of 2 years' worth of Lois Lerner's emails and 6 of her compatriots now. That case over. That's what we've learned there. Then we'll talk to Mark Larson, who hosts the Mark Larson Show in San Diego. He'll share some of his remembrances of the great Tony Gwynn, who I believe was a dear friend of his, passed away yesterday at age 54. 866-509-7268, our phone number. Dana Carvey and I in Washington, D.C. on July 12th, Hollywood, Florida, July 13th. And then Dana and I will be joined by Kevin Nealon at the Mountain Winery in Saratoga, California, Saturday, September 27th. For more information, go to DennisMillerRadio.com and click on Dennis Live. Let's see. Waiting your phone calls at 866-509-RANT. There's Jerry in Missouri. Jerry, what's up?
Yeah, how you doing there, Mr. Miller?
Fine, thank you.
Hey, look, there's a whole bunch of things. I'd like to have about 2 days to sit down and talk with you, but 1 week ago, I heard you suggest that millions of these illegals be dumped into the VA healthcare system. Now, I don't know what planet you have been living on for the last month, but the VA system can't take care, either cannot or will not take care of the veterans that are out here, and you want to dump a whole bunch of millions of illegals in on top of that mix. Now, as far as, if you'd quit smoking that damn pot of yours, you might not be such a bad guy.
All right, Jer. Thanks for the call. 866-509-7268. Wanted to give him a say. Obviously never said that, but he seemed a little rickety. I'm not in the fighting business anymore. Everybody gets too offended, but never said that. I think I said something to the effect that don't worry in the Veterans Administration. I can't give you a fix, but we'll all be over there soon in that sort of a system. But I don't believe I ever said we should take all the illegals here and place them into the VA system. I think I might have said that the VA would have a better chance being placed into the same care that the people just walking across the border would be, by way of being ironic. But I'm probably over-explaining this. Maybe I said what I said. I'm not paying that much attention. 866-509-7268. We can take some voicemails, too. Let's go to Lynn in New Mexico, voicemail number 4.
A couple of good books you might want to read on McCarthyism and communist conspiracy, thing like that. None Dare Call It Conspiracy and None Dare Call It Treason. Very good books. The second one really gets into McCarthyism. I got to say, Dennis, I don't agree with everything you say, but I love listening to you, man. It's a heck of a good program. You have a good one now. Bye-bye.
Thank you. I don't agree with everything anybody says. You know what I mean? I'm always amazed that's even an option. When you think about, I used to say that human beings were snowflakes and that they were all obviously different, but now I say human beings, at least in this country, are snowflakes because they melt immediately upon hitting the ground. But yeah, there can't, as idiosyncratic as human beings can't be, we can't agree. So thanks for the nice compliment. I think I'll just keep it Whitaker Chambers, witness, and I'll leave it at that because it's not something that fascinates me all that much. I've read some stuff about Joe Welch, and I wanted to read something about McCarthy, but not a book, but just what an oafish pig he was. But also the Kazan stuff touches on it in an interesting way because, like he said, there were some people in the Communist Party in America who were bad people who wanted to do American in, and he was not exactly haunted by ratting on certain people. I believe he was by other people. I think he named Odette's. I think that haunted him. 866-509-7268 is our phone number. We'll continue to take calls after the break. We'll talk to Brent Bozell about Lois Lerner's lost emails. This is the Dennis Miller Show. Joining us now, good man, Media Research Center President Brent Bozell. Hey, Brent, welcome back to the show.
Dennis, how are you?
Fine, thanks. I always tell my listeners on Friday at the end of my show to not pay attention between then and Monday. If they can't get themselves off, watching it and ruining weekends. And it paid dividends this last weekend because they did the dump on Lois Lerner, I believe, late in the day Friday, that her emails are all lost. No doubt that will lead to her walking. And then when I saw it Monday, I don't watch on the weekend, I was pissed off, and I remember thinking, I'm glad I don't watch. Somebody has to watch, and you're on the wall, so good for you, but that would have ruined my weekend. She'll just skate now, right?
But here's the problem: is there was nothing to watch. I mean, this other than Fox News, typical. Virtually nobody had any interest in this story at all. CNN had some coverage, but it was crickets on ABC, NBC, and CBS. And think about this, Dennis. You're talking about something that would make Rosemary Woods tingle with orgasmic delight. To be
I have thought about it, Brett. I have thought about it. It's led me to give up. I mean, I'm serious. I was a pretty good fighter for years, but nothing's going to happen now. And I guarantee you, they'll give us a few weeks grace here to let the agita wear off. And then if you bring something up against Lois Lerner, you're going to get sued, or you'll be audited in the new wave. So it's.
Well, I think at this point they're just trying to run the clock out on this term. Remember, the first thing that George Bush 43 did when he assumed the presidency in 2000 was to declare the scandals of Bill Clinton over, and that we were going to move on, and it was a new beginning. And I think that's the calculation that this administration is playing. Clearly, there's wrongdoing. Clearly, there's criminal wrongdoing. And I suspect, given this panicked move on their part, that it must be far greater than we thought it was for them to do something as ridiculous as this. But their calculation is that they can do this month after month after month because Eric Holder is not going to lift a finger to investigate this, leaving Darrell Issa by himself in the House to investigate this, and in the hopes that the next president, whether whoever it is, will just say there's fatigue over this type of stuff. Let's move on.
The next president is, unfortunately, in my eyes, going to be Hillary Clinton or whoever the Democrats run, and they'll double down on this stuff. Listen,
why I think it's not going to be Hillary Clinton. And I'm starting to see a narrative developing here. She has to tack left or tack right. She can't stay where she is, which is right in the middle of this administration that everybody is down on, and the American people want over with as soon as possible. So she's got to go left or right of it. She can't go left of it, as far left as this administration is. There's no room to go to the left of Obama. So she has to go to the right. But if she goes to the right, she loses her base to the degree she goes to the right. So she's left with one card to play, and that is the first woman president. But look what's happened in these interviews. Look what's happened with her book sales that have flatlined from the get-go. There doesn't seem to be an eagerness for Hillary Clinton. People seem to have, at this stage anyway, Hillary fatigue, and she hasn't even started.
How did the book tour go? Was it a funky
60,000 hard copies sold to date, according to what I've seen today. I mean, that's which means with a $14 million signing fee that she received, Simon & Schuster are losing their shirts.
Did she make any egregious errors while she was out there?
No, she played. That's the bigger problem. She played it so safe. She said nothing in the book, and that's what even her supporters, which is kind of interesting, Dennis, because so many people who are being critical of her are her supporters, who are in this case they're just saying it's an absolute snore of a book that answered nothing and explained nothing. And I think some people are starting to take offense at that. On Benghazi. Look what happened with Diane Sawyer on Benghazi. This is the arrogance Hillary Clinton, where she believed that nobody would dare challenge her, especially Diane Sawyer, especially ABC News. And by God, she did. Diane Sawyer asked her. And nothing egregiously tough, nothing like she would ask a Republican, but she did ask Hillary a question. Terry Gross of NPR did ask her about gay marriage. Clearly, Terry Gross is in favor of gay marriage, but she wanted to ask Hillary, how did you make that switch from being against it to for it? And the more she asked it, the more Hillary tied herself up in knots, angrily dismissing and not wanting to talk about it. So the more she's talking these days, the less likable she's becoming, which is very interesting, Dennis, because she doesn't seem to have the discipline that she had 8 years ago.
Is it the very definition of a small victory that a Secretary of State, after stepping down and having the Benghazi thing happen on her watch, that fielding a pretty easy question from Diane Sawyer and not really a double-up like Katie Couric would have leaned in on Sarah Palin about what newspapers she read, is that the victories we can hope for now in the future, that a question was indeed asked by one person?
Rick, the bar is that low, and I've talked to my staff about that very question. When she is asked the semblance of a tough question, just a hint of toughness, the perception is that she was hammered by the reporter. She was not. The Republicans received questions 10 times harder than this on a daily basis. But when you have got reporters who on ABC who liken her candidacy to the crucifixion of our Lord, as they've actually done, where they put her above God in their reverence. It's expected that no one would ever ask her a tough question, and she's been doing these interviews in front of female reporters that I know she clearly expected to be sycophantic, and I think are still sycophants. But there are some questions they just have to ask. One of them being Benghazi. They just have to ask that question. And
well, I would say
Dennis, the more she answered it, the worse it got. She said she would take full responsibility and then blamed everybody.
I would say that there was a preordained tacit agreement that a question would be asked. Indeed, I think that was mandatory on Hillary's part, and it would be of the softball nature Diane asked, and there would be no real backup to the backup. I don't agree that she thought nothing was coming her way. I think they had to cage it with certain people that there would be something asked, but no real heavy lifting done. And I would say that it's a fair statement to make now. The tougher questions will be faced about Benghazi by a Miss USA panel contestant who makes it to the Final Five and represents a red state. Will face a tougher query from the judging panel while she's standing there in a swimsuit, and the Secretary of State who was on watch that night will answer over the next few years. It's just that way now. So I don't think Diane. I don't think she thought she was not going to face anything. I think that she was. I think it was a tacit agreement that something would be asked and then not really braced. I mean, so they'd have plausible deniability. They could say they were asked, but I don't think anybody did a Vincent Bugliosi cross on that, do you?
It would follow that she would have the answer prepared. This is what I mean about the discipline of the Clintons back.
But why when you don't have to?
But
Brent, why when you don't have to? You know if she runs, she's going to receive unbelievable support from ABC, NBC, CBS, the Washington Post, and the New York Times. That power alignment is stuck. Why would she study when she does not have to?
And this is what I mean. She didn't expect it. I know. Either she expected it and didn't get prepared for it, or she didn't expect it and therefore wasn't prepared for it. Either way, she didn't see these questions coming. I mean, for
all I know is this:
broke, leaving the White House. I mean, I bet you the moment that the answer came out of her mouth, she just said to herself, "What the heck did I just say?"
There were two words I always used to look at interestingly from an aesthetic standpoint. One was Gotterdammerang and one was vouchsafed. When I watched the complicit nature of the mainstream press with the Democratic Party, I thought I at least better look up vouchsafed. She is vouchsafed. She's passed. If she wants to run, she will run, and nobody's going to go back and say, do you remember when she didn't have this answer? It's something primal, deep, tectonic has happened, Brent. And if it's not her, you know who it might be, because they need a woman, Elizabeth Warren. So there you go. You say there's no roomed out, left Barack Obama. There's one. Elizabeth Warren could swoop in.
I don't see it. I think it's going to be a lot tougher for Hillary than I used to think. I used to think it was going to be easier. I'm not so sure now.
Well, I'm probably misreading the tea leaves in the country. And like I said, other people have told me that I'm not seeing all the – well, like I said, we're having our victories now, and that Diane Sawyer did ask one question to a woman who's just stepped down as Secretary of State about the biggest incident on her watch, and did ask her a question. So I guess I should – get in and celebrate the small victories with everybody else.
It was one question in one interview.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sure it'll augur for better things in the 2016 election. Thank you, Brent. We appreciate your time. Brent Bozell on Twitter at Brent Bozell. Yeah, I've got to start opening my mind up to the true nature of that. Yeah, one question was asked, and we'll take that. I don't know if we'll get the White House back. I'm not sure we'll get the Senate back. I think we'll maintain the House, but I've got to start celebrating the smaller natures of victory, although I'm more prone, and I'll have to teach myself this over the years, when a victory is so small to be submicroscopic, when Van Leeuwenhoek cannot isolate the victory, to just say, I'm not going to slobber all. Hey, folks, welcome back to the Dennis Miller Show. I'll be performing with Dana Carvey in Washington, D.C. on July 12th, Hollywood, Florida, July 13th, then Kevin Nealon, Dana, and I at the Mountain Winery in Saratoga, California. Saturday, September 27th. For more information, go to DennisMillerRadio.com and click on Dennis Live. The great Tony Gwynn died yesterday at age 54, and he seemed like a sweetheart of a guy. I believe one of his dear friends from San Diego is the host of the Mark Larson Show in San Diego. Let's remember Tony a little with Mark Larson. Hey, Mark, how are you?
Hey, Den, man, how you doing? Great to be on the Dennis Miller Show, as always. Yeah, it was a rough day yesterday, not because I didn't know that this was coming. I just kind of figured, like so many, that Tony would, like a cat, discover his 12th or 13th life. I knew him about 30 years. In fact, way back to right before he went to Major League Baseball. He was at San Diego State. He could have gone pro basketball and then gone pro baseball. He chose wisely, and the rest is history. I mean, phenomenal player and a fighter to the very end when it came to trying to rise above his challenges.
I saw some amazing footage of him as a point guard taking it to the hole, basing up and hitting a shot, and it reminded me of Isaiah Thomas's base. He must have been a hell of a basketball player. He looked really good in that clip.
Yeah, and more importantly, he was one heck of a player, Dennis. I mean, 338 lifetime batting average for a retiring player at that level at 338. That hadn't been done since 1939. And
second
he wasn't,
to the kid.
When he came up to the Padres, he wasn't instant, Tony Gwynn as we knew him. He worked his butt off for that.
Yeah, think about Ted Williams, folks, with that stroke at 342 lifetime. Tony Gwynn, hardly the same body type, just banging. It's almost like he did not play with Charlie Lau or coached by him, but he adopted that sort of thing where I can just see him banging it between shortstop and liners right out there almost every time, right?
Yeah, and always exciting, 5 gold gloves, and he had 3,141 hits. And, you look at some of the stats, like 8 batting titles. The only person to better that was Ty Cobb. And I was saying this on my show this morning on KCBQ, that if you start looking at the quality of the man, that's where the stats don't tell the whole story, because Ty Cobb was all intense, but shall we say rather intense. It's like, here come my tweets, and I don't care if I rearrange your face. Tony's character trumps any of those. If there are stats with ties, his character trumps that, because he was consistently, a heck of a man, always kept good humor, never let stuff get him down. Even when I talked to him the last time 5 weeks ago, or so, when he was battling this horrific cancer, and I'd say, well, how you really doing? And he'd go, well, for today, I'm doing great. I'm just, people just need to know, based on what I'm dealing with, I'm doing great. He was always optimistic and always a quality guy.
He'll be remembered for forever. That's one of the benefits. You might lose a few $1 million, but you stay with the same team. When they talk about the Padres 200 years from now, they'll still be talking about the great Tony Gwynn. It's nice to hear from Mark Larson. Mark's website, by the way, is marklarson.com, where I'm sure you'll read some more in-depth memories. Nice to hear that, as unbelievable as it might seem, he was a better person than he was a hitter. Hey, Mark?
Yeah, he was. And you know what's really terrific? One time I got him to sign well, my producer, who's a Dodger fan, I'm hoping for an intervention. He's lived in San Diego since '86. My producer, Noah, said, I got to get a Dodger hat signed by Tony. This is several years ago, and we got Tony to sign under the bill of the hat. And he said, well, I guess it's okay because at the time Tony Gwynn Jr. was playing for the Dodgers, so he found a little escape. But I think it's the only time he ever signed a Dodger anything, you know, but he still was laughing about it and just a great quality guy.
Yeah.
You know,
well, appropriately enough, your producer's name Noah, because I think there's like 2 fans of L.A. in San Diego. Get him on the arc. Thank you, Marky, for your time, my friend. Thanks for your remembrances of your good friend. Rest in peace, Tony Gwynn. 866-509-7268, our phone number. You can listen to my daily Miller Time podcast at podcast1.com. You can listen to the Bladcast Christian Show on iTunes, BLADTCAST, by the way, and at DennisMillerRadio.com/Bladcast. Let's see, what else is happening in the world? Central New York location of country singer Toby Keith's I Love This Bar and Grill, chain of restaurants, the mothership in Gotham, owes more than $250,000 in sales taxes to the state. When asked for a comment, Keith said, quote, come to think of it, I really don't love that bar or grill that's attached to it, end quote. It's an official statement.
That's a lot
you know
for
what?
Toby.
Tony doesn't have any money in that. Toby, I'm honest to God, he doesn't have a penny in
He
that.
probably
God
gets
bless him.
he probably gets a check, you know, every year for licensing his name or something to it. But
There's only been one player, I won't say his name because he's a great guy, as I understand from dear friends who are dear friends with him. World-class athletes probably learned the lesson from this guy. All you have to bring is your name and, you know, some goodwill. And, you know, eat the food and show up once every couple of years and have fun with it. You know, I don't think anybody's thinking you're working the grill, but you don't put your own money in.
no,
You
no,
don't.
no, no.
That's why you have the name. So somebody's going to pay for the $250,000, but it's not going to be Toby. And I guarantee you that, listen to me talking tough. I hope everybody's things work. Obviously, they don't work. A lot of these athlete things don't work, but very infrequently do they get stung, as it should be. For God's sakes, athletes are, you know, Toby Keith made the Toby Keith name. And what about a pipe salon or a smoking salon, Christian, called Keith's Toby?
Wait a
Where
minute.
you go in and we bring
That's a
back
great
Tobies.
idea.
We bring back smoking Tobies. Speaking of smoking, let's go to Carl in New Hampshire. He's got a smoking goods story. Hey, Carl, I read about this. Flesh it out for me.
Well, I'm not sure what state it was, but I heard about this retirement home where they found a meth lab, and you know, I just find it refreshing to see senior citizens who are still industrious and have some entrepreneurial skills.
And I love the fact that he was given an early bird price on rock at around 4 in the afternoon, because not all the people in the old folk home can, you know, pay the premium.
Absolutely. I'm with you on Hillary. I think Brent Bozell's got the bad read there. I watched Waters' piece on O'Reilly last night, and there were thousands of people lined up for her.
Yeah, I think, listen, I admire Brent immensely. I could not do it. It would rot my gut, or I'd walk around in a perpetual state of animus. But, you know, Brent happens to think that there are bad things coming down the road. Some people think that we're in the midst of bad things. I've got a year of adjustment under my belt. The bad things happened, and it's not going back for a long time. Thank you, Carl. Let's go to Carol in Kansas. Hey, Carol, how are you?
Hello.
Hey, Carol, Dennis Miller, what do you got?
Oh, yes, Dennis. I was riding home at the 11 o'clock segment listening to you talking about the Catholic situation and how you saw these huge churches and buildings and the wealth of the Catholic Church. And last night I had been reading an article in The Week about Ireland and the horror of mass grave of babies. And when I was born in Northern Ireland, Belfast, Northern Ireland, and during my early days there, we left there in 1955 to come to the United States. But during those days, we were told over and over again, many times, about the atrocities of what the Catholic Church had done to 796 infants, killed them, and buried them. And now in this article in The Week, which came out yesterday, here it is, all of it, what the Catholic Church, and is it any wonder that the Protestants rose up against them? This was awful, awful situation.
All right, Carol, appreciate you telling us. I think Carol brings extra stuff to it, right? Wasn't there big fights in between the... How did that lay out, Christian? I never really knew about Ireland. I always pretended I did, but Northern Ireland did not want to give in to the Queen, right?
Correct.
But they were also, what faith were they?
They would be the... you know what? I'd be guessing.
Right?
Yeah, if I give an answer,
guessing.
yeah.
It just wasn't my thing. But somebody call in and give us a tutorial on Ireland. But I knew there was something called the Troubles there. And people take those things to their grave, although they don't seem to be shooting each other up or bombing things like they used to. So something must have happened somewhere along the way. And, and that's one I fully concede. Demands inhumanity to man I have trouble reading about, so I never read about that one. Here's Patrick in Ohio. Patrick, hang on. I'll be right back on the other side of the break. God, I feel like Bobby Sands here. We're reigniting the whole fuse on the Dennis Miller Show. What is that? I read up a little on the Ireland thing during the break, and indeed Northern Ireland predominantly Protestant, but there is the Northern Irish Catholics who want a sovereign state of Ireland, and the Protestants like being called England's wingman or whatever. But I think you could hear in that woman's voice, and maybe indeed there is an article in, what did she say, the Nation or something yesterday, finally unearthing some sort of mass grave archaeological dig. I don't know. I haven't read the story. But I think you could hear in her voice that hatreds can exist in nice old women and people of faith. And, she talked about the Catholics. There was a tinge of that same thing that you hear about, that you hear from Islamics about the Jews. You know what I mean? Everybody's got somebody they hate. Let's face facts. Human beings, we paint a noble picture because it's tough to look at the other hard drive stuff. But there's some subsets in that hard drive that are pretty grim. It seems to me, ever since that first day somebody came up to the water hole and somebody picked up the Jaws ass and brained him. Instead of just saying, here's part of the meat. We should all concede we've got some hang-ups. Patrick in Ohio. Hey, Patrick, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you? I just like to say, I know that there currently isn't the type of conflict that there was going on in Northern Ireland up until the earlier 2000s. And I do not hate people of faith who are different from mine. I was raised Catholic. I would say I'm a progressive Catholic. I don't go along with a lot of traditional beliefs. But it is not right for her as a person or her people to use religion to deny people jobs, to deny them the right to vote, which they did. And I furthermore think that Bobby Sands and Jerry Adams are going to be on the right side of history, because Northern Ireland will eventually become part of the Republic of Ireland, and people in Northern Ireland will see, gee, we're not under some dictatorship from the Vatican.
Well, listen, I think Jerry Adams is a bad guy, and
I know that doesn't surprise me. I think you kind of got a thing going with the Irish. Maybe you don't like the Irish.
I've never even talked about it, Patrick. My whole family's Irish. You don't even. This is the first time in 8 years I've been on the air I talked about this. How do you got a thing? Where do you get that? And man, do you see the reservoir of sort of anger you're sitting on with that upfront statement about I love everybody and I never judge on faith? God, you're sitting on it's like a trash can that's barely, you threw a fizzy into sulfuric acid. You can barely keep the lid down. I've never talked about the Irish thing in 8 years. All my in-laws and my family, Irish. I think Jerry Adams, a guy who does it, not out in the streets, they're just nuts, but a guy who puts that face on and knows exactly what he's funding is a bad guy. We can just disagree, but this whole thing that you're a man of peace, listen, you're almost trembling. Do you hear me trembling? No, I've never talked about Ireland. You okay now? Or I'll give you 15 seconds, wade into me and tell me, as a man who understands other people and their varied views, you think mine sucks. Go ahead.
Yeah, can I say?
I said,
Hello?
Go right ahead, man. You're a wise man.
Yeah, the woman that called, I mean, the fears of her are irrational. Al Smith ran for president, and people wouldn't vote for him because they actually thought there was an underground tunnel that led to D.C. from the Vatican. So
at least you're not focused on it, Patty.
I'm sorry.
I'm just saying it's the first time I've talked about it. I don't know where you got this. You got a thing about the Irish. Was that just me? Can you at least give me an honest bang here as we get off the phone and say, you're right, Dennis. I've never heard you ever say anything about Ireland and all the times I've seen you. Maybe this is the first time you've ever seen me, but can you at least say that you were just kind of making your argument with some sort of weird assertion? Where'd he go? All right, that's the answer. Let's go to Randy in California. Randy, how are you?
Hello.
Hey, Randy. Hello, Dennis Miller. What would you like to talk about on the radio today?
Well, I just wanted to comment that the conflict in Northern Ireland was characterized by Northern Irish Protestants versus Irish Catholics. But the real issue was economics, jobs, money. And if you really want some insight into it, read Leon Uris' novel Trinity, which spells it out clearer than I've ever been able to imagine.
All right. Thanks for the recommendation, Randy. 866-509-7268. Yeah, I got a thing for Jerry Adams. If there's one thing I'm known for, Christian, right, it's my aversion to the faux bloodless nature of Sinn Féin.
Well,
an album I did, or weren't we in an improv troupe called the Bloodless Hands?
I think he was confused because we all know that you have it in for Jerry Lewis, not Jerry Adams. I think that...
Now listen, I am not a huge Rachel McAdams fan. Maybe that's where he heard it. But this whole thing, you've got a thing. How long have you known me? Is that the most obscure topic ever? Have we ever gotten to that?
I don't think we've gotten anywhere near that before.
Has anybody
really
ever gotten to that in the last 20 years, quite frankly?
Maybe the Irish.
I know, but I'm just saying, the guy was trembling. I love when they laid down that code of, I am not a person who judges person by religion. And then he thinks, I can't go right to but. He's on to that. And he puts an and in there. And then, that's supposed to throw you off the scent. Then he hits the but. And he's almost like, you can just see him. Then they said that there was a pneumatic tube underneath the Atlantic. Oh, my God. I'm glad you've got it all dialed in out there, my friend in Ohio. And glad it doesn't rankle you. But that's where your faith has brought you. You don't judge. Zookeepers wielding pieces of melon. And now there's a name for a band.
Pieces of melon.
No, zookeepers wielding pieces of melon. Can you not see finishing your big song and saying, thank you! We've been zookeepers wielding pieces of melon! Now that's a band I would pay to see. Anyway, they have successfully lured back 2 escaped monkeys to their home in a Transylvanian zoo. But 3 more are still believed to be on the run in a nearby forest. Thus ends the greatest sentence I've ever pronounced in public. I believe Roger Corman's estate has already optioned the film rights to this story. And using some dramatic license, he's turned it into Transylvanian runaway vampire monkeys.
I'm in.
Is Corman still alive?
He is, yes.
Well, then he's optioned it, not his estate. Although he should legally change his name. And when you're really old, shouldn't you just as a joke change your name to Roger Corman's estate?
That's true.
That's what I would do. If I was pronounced that I had a year left to live, I'd change my name to Dennis Miller's estate, just to handle it with a degree of aplomb that we haven't seen since the Great War in the Zevon on the Letterman Show. All right, tomorrow we'll get into the Hatfields and McCoys. And then a little later in the week, we're going to talk about Nebuchadnezzar playing his records all night.
Just so you know.
Today, it was the Northern Ireland.
I'm hashtag Team Hatfield. I just want it on the record.
Well, as you well know, I'm going out today and doing completing work on my book, Jerry Adams.